Well, our top story, the Indian Army now controlling multiple key ridges on the south bank of the Pangong Lake, including areas in depth, and has effective military control of the entire disputed area in the region. Disputed as far as China is concerned. India considers this area to be entirely ours. But the big breaking news development in the last couple of hours that there was a fresh attempt by Chinese forces yesterday, even as talks were going on, to engage in a provocative action. What exactly the Chinese did, we have some details on. They tried to regain some of the heights which Indian soldiers have now occupied. There was shouting which went on, no physical skirmishes, and the Chinese brigadier, who was actually in talks with his Indian counterpart at that time, was told, get your soldiers to stand down if you don't want this to escalate. Fortunately, good sense prevailed. Now, the map you'll see over here shows all the areas where there have been Chinese incursions since May. The area we are now talking about is South Pangong. That's the area which has been completely highlighted on the map. Let's bring that up full screen. No, you can see that. Well, the Indian Army is now in full control of the south bank of the Pangong Lake and depth areas, by which I mean areas further to the south. That entire area in yellow is actually the area that India presently occupies. What do we mean by occupying? The Indian Army is on key ridge lines. Why? After a nighttime attempt by Chinese forces to grab territory. Now, by occupying these ridges, the Indian Army is able to directly observe Chinese positions from a height, a huge advantage in mountain warfare. We'll explain this to you in a few moments. Now, this is the broad area where the Indian Army is now dominating the heights. And these are Chinese positions within the so-called disputed area, an area which India believes is ours. What you now see are close-ups of Chinese structures along the banks of the Pangong Lake, which lies within this region, not to be confused with the Pangong Lake, which lies a short distance away to the north. Now, India responded to a Chinese attempt at building up tank forces and infantry a short distance from here, albeit on their side of the line of actual control. Now, these are the same areas when viewed from the heights. You can see the enormous advantage that a position on the heights actually gives you. The Chinese would likely deploy their tanks on this road they have built in the disputed area, which links to Chinese posts we just saw, but given the position Indian soldiers now occupy, they can be targeted with missiles. Now, that Chinese road we are talking about, this is another angle change from some of the areas where Indian troops are presently deployed. And as you can see, there is a clear line of sight to these Chinese positions far below. This is the advantage of holding the ground. Now, let's change to another image, again from the broad area where India controls the heights. As you can see, we are looking down on the Aksai chain area of China. Over here, the line of control very close to where Indian soldiers now stand, and this observation height is a huge advantage. Now, the Chinese embassy says that India's moves have grossly violated China's territorial integrity and that these military moves have damaged peace and tranquility along China-India border areas. India insists that our actions are defensive and preempted an aggressive Chinese move to push in forces into this region. Joining us now, Lieutenant General Satish Dua, the former Chief of Integrated Defence Staff, Vipin Narang, Associate Professor at MIT, somebody who follows developments here very closely, Rajat Sethi, Advisor to the Manipur Chief Minister, Shama Mohammed, Spokesperson of the Congress. I'd like to thank all of you very much for joining us. General Dua, let me come to you. What is the major advantage for our viewers of India dominating the heights in this region?
Vishnu, let me try and explain it this way to an average citizen. If you go on top of Qutub Minar, or you go on the top of a tall skyscraper where you can see the entire city around, imagine what it would do to a soldier or an army unit if you are have that kind of a commanding height that you can look down and observe into every aspect or every activity that is going on down below, maybe your own, also enemies. You can also imagine that if you mount night vision enabled devices or electronic devices, you can even continue that watch in the hours of darkness. You can have an observation post established which can actually control and direct fire of artillery weapons, of long-range guns. You can actually have a weapon looking down and which can disrupt any movement that you have observed because of the height. All in all, what I'm trying to say is that in the mountains, it is all about observation. And if you gain a height, observation is one aspect, and dominating it by being able to bring down fire, effective fire on the other adversary is the other aspect. So with this too, it's a very super combination of a great advantage being gained. And that is what the Indian troops have done. They have not allowed, or they have thwarted the attempts made by the Chinese side a couple of days ago when they went and occupied that. Also, like you rightly brought out, yesterday, while even you and I were talking, and while we were discussing this, while the military level talks were going on, at that moment also, the Chinese did try to stir it up.
Okay, General, one moment, I just want to go across to my other panelists as well. Vipin, why are the Chinese disregarding the line of actual control in this manner? Is there a reason why it appears that they aren't at all serious about talks?
We don't know. Vishnu, good to see you. Thanks for having me. I think one of the open-ended questions, and the External Affairs Minister, Jay Shankar, said over the weekend also, India seems to be at a loss as to why China persists with maintaining its initial positions. And if it is the case, and there are a lot of details about this latest incident that we don't know, there's a lot of ambiguity and conflicting information coming out. But if it is the case that the Chinese were attempting to seize the heights on the southern bank of the Pangong Lake, and the Indians preempted, two things I think are important to note. One is that that suggests that the Chinese have no intention of going away from their initial incursions, and it suggests that they're trying to poke at other places as well, and their appetite isn't satisfied yet. But the second important point is, the Indian Army ability to seize these heights preemptively is a very good sign. It shows that the Indian Army is able to stop the bleeding at the very least, and prevent the Chinese from making further gains elsewhere. And hopefully, the Indian Army can build leverage to try to compel China to withdraw from the positions it currently occupies. But the first step is preventing China from occupying more ground and territory in this area. So that's a good sign. But there's really no good answer as to why the Chinese are doing this. And, there's a famous quote: "It's when the Chinese say nothing that I really worry." And the Chinese are not indicating any intention to withdraw from their position. So I think the Indian Army and the Chinese are in for the long haul. And this is going to be significant buildup requirement for the Indians through the winter, and it shows no sign of de-escalating or disengaging.
Rajat, is there a sense now in the government that, look, enough is enough, we just have to stop the bleeding right now, and if that means that even if there are shots fired, then that would unfortunately have to be the case?
Well, I agree with that. Actually, through this incident in the past couple of days, we have achieved a new normal. Clearly, there is a renewed show of an intent of political will, as well as demonstrable military capability that China cannot change the status quo unilaterally anymore. So this, I believe, is definitely a strategic shift. It's a new normal for us. Remember that the Indian Army took proper military action. It was a provocative military maneuver done to preempt any move from the Chinese. We have now dominated features which will allow us to dominate not just the South Pangong area, but also give a clear signal to China that the alertness of Indian military cannot be taken for granted. We also understand that China is definitely going to be there for long haul, and these constant probing actions are going to continue from the Chinese. What from the political leadership of the Chinese, if you were to understand, and this is my belief, that they believe that China, it is China's strategic moment to seize, and the world is distracted. The US is distracted with their elections, and this perhaps is a time to prolong the conflict as much as possible.
Sure.
The other possible explanation could be that they do not have a face-saving way out of this mess. And this is why they want to continue and drag the whole thing And the time that is spent in this conflict might be one of those space savers that China can walk out with.
Okay.
Perhaps that's what the Chinese thinking is.
Okay. Shama, the Congress has been quite critical of the government in not coming clean on the record on the extent of the Chinese incursions. But on this occasion, there was a proactive statement. I was about to say preemptive statement. Very shortly after the Chinese tried to come into this area, they were out with a statement. They explained what exactly was happening. Is this perhaps a clear indicator that whatever was not stated categorically in the past is now being stated because there's nothing further to hide or not to reveal?
Vishnu, here the army thwarted the effort of the Chinese. That is when they come out with a statement. Because here, yes, not allow them to get it. But what happens if there is a problem? You have to accept there's a problem. Then only you can find a solution. Now, you asked a question to the MIT professor, and he answered, we don't know why the Chinese are continuing. I'll tell you why. When the Chinese came into our territory, and Mr. Modi gave a statement on June 19th saying that nobody entered into our territory, no army post was taken. That is when you embolden the Chinese, because they understood there is a prime minister here for whose image is more important than the sovereignty of his nation. So, of course, they will continue. They know, Chinese are bullies. They bully all over the world, and especially now in India, they're bullying us because there is a prime minister who they feel, whose image is much more important. So here we have had a victory. But what about the 20 square kilometers they are into Galvan? What about the 65 square kilometers they are in Pangong Lake? What about the 12 square kilometers they are in the hot springs? They have not gone out from any of these
The other
positions.
areas, no, but Galwan it's a disengagement which is fairly successful, in fact.
No, can I finish? So what is happening is we've been talking for the last 2 months, but there's no disengagement. And the region which they went last night, on the 29th, that is the south bank of the Pangong Lake, it's a very heavily defended area by the Indian army. And they have the guts to go in. What does that show? They don't care about these talks. They are bullying India. And there is a prime minister out there who's not telling the truth to the people of this country. That is what the prime minister should come out and tell us the truth. How much of our land has been taken? Okay. Some of the news reports coming out from Hindu says, the Hindu, one of the well-known newspapers, says 1,000 square kilometers of our land is
Okay, one second. I just want to go back to Rajat for a moment on that one point. Rajat, it is a fact that the incursions in many areas, the Chinese have not gone back. They've not gone back at all. And therefore, there is a certain amount of territory in square kilometers which is technically in Chinese possession now. That wasn't the case before May. Do you believe the government needs to come clean on all of these areas and what we intend to do?
Well, beyond the political rhetoric that goes on, one needs to understand that this is a time when you need to give our strategic thinkers within the government to make critical decisions and safeguard the country. The nation has decided that Prime Minister Narendra Modi, they've decided twice that he is the best person to safeguard India's interests, and we should give him time. He's been constantly working, and this specific incident of the couple of days back clearly shows that there is this renewed zeal of political will. There is a clear, military leadership actions which have been taken, and such kind of preemptive steps will be taken throughout. I mean, India essentially always maintains that position that we are defending our territory, and China is the one who is the aggressor. And defending we will, and we will go on to defend wherever possible. And China cannot carry on with their salami slicing. That will be thwarted at any moment. So I think what Prime Minister is doing, he's looking at all these strategic options. I mean, if you were to follow Congress, you cannot just force the nation into war. And you should try looking at all possible means.
All right. So all possible options, absolutely. I take that point. I'm out of time, unfortunately, on this discussion. I'd like to thank you all very much for joining us.